Hi, I'm Saasha, and I beat the often path by doing things that surprise people. Everyone thinks that I'm a hardcore hippie, but really I'm a hardcore capitalist.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we showcase unusual success stories to remind you that you can be successful without being a dick. I know, shocking, but so few people do it. My guest today is Saasha Celestial-One, and she's the CEO and co-founder of Olio, an eco-conscious startup that's raised over $50 million in funding. Her concept is pretty simple. We throw away so much good food, in fact, up to 40% globally. Her app makes it easy to give away leftover food for both individuals, think something like Uber, etc., and also for companies at scale like supermarkets. Are you going on a trip? Well, just take a picture of the food in your fridge and don't let it go to waste. Somebody in your area can come pick it up and you can save everybody a lot of trouble. Do good, feel good about yourself and the world in the process. Saasha has received numerous awards, including a UN Momentum for Change award and so many more big things. But more than that, she has a really unique path to success that I just know you'll find deeply inspiring. So here's Saasha Celestial-One. Such a cool way to begin. A hardcore hippie, but really I'm a hardcore capitalist because historically people have thought that those two things are at odds. Some people have even criticized the actual hippie generation for going back on their ideals and for abandoning them. That's the general belief. So the fact that you've summarized that dichotomy and that you feel that you're one and not the other is a very fascinating way to start. So can you briefly tell us about your mission and what it is that you do now and how you got there?
So I'm the founder of an app called Olio. We've got about 6 million people all around the world using our app to share or give away things they no longer need, food, household items, or to lend out things that they have in their home that they don't use very frequently. Air mattresses, tennis rackets, you get the idea. And as much as I said that I'm a capitalist, I am trying to create an alternate economy where the currency is sort of goodwill within the community and not hardcore. Cold, hard cash. And we've got about 1 million items added a week. And we're on a mission to reduce waste of all kinds in the home and local community at scale.
And you have succeeded in that. The numbers of what you've already been able to achieve are just staggering. Billions of gallons of water saved, or it's liters perhaps. And the food waste saved is incredible. So what is the general idea behind how does Olio work?
So we've got, you're right. Every day I look, it's sort of ticked up another 1 million meals we've saved, which is pretty awesome. So we're on track for about 50 million meals this year alone that would have been sent to landfill, but instead have fed people every day, regular people. And the way we do that is twofold. First, everything that's shared on Olio is shared by an individual in their community with another neighbor in the community. So you take a picture, add a description, click upload, and then it alerts people nearby. Hey, Sasha's added bread, tomatoes, whatever. And if someone wants it, then they simply send a private message, say, I can pop around, pick it up, and they come over. And it's an in real life transaction as in everything's free, but still it's an exchange. But we also have recruited about 100,000 volunteers from within the community, people who really want to make a difference by collecting unsold food from businesses. So the supermarkets, caterers, events, fast food restaurants, anywhere there's unsold food that can't be donated to charity that's still fit for human consumption, we arrange for members of our community who are food safety trained to go, and we match them with those collection opportunities. They pick up that food, they bring it straight home, they add it to their app in the same way that they would with their own food, and then the neighbors pop around to pick it up. And that is our Food Waste Heroes program, and that is just bringing in so much food into our sort of sharing platform, and it really is driving our growth.
And you have something like 4,000 of these Food Waste Heroes at the moment? You have many.
We have 46,000 who have registered and taken the training. But each week there's about 11,000, maybe 12,000 collections from stores. Incredible.
So it's taken off, basically. And if I put some bread to use your some Tesco bread since you're based in the UK right now. Somebody comes and picks it up. You said it's an exchange. Is it an exchange, or is it just me gifting it to somebody?
It's just gifting it to someone. So there's no money or exchange that takes place. And half of all food listings are requested in under 20 minutes. So it's a very quick experience. Things come on and off the app very quickly. And that's because we've built a really dense network of users. So usually the person who's coming to pick it up is just they're around the corner, they're across the street, which means that you can give away quite, a place like London, people don't drive. That makes sense. In the US, I'm American, people do drive. And it actually does work, obviously not quite so quickly, in more sort of suburban and rural areas where driving is the norm. And people just bake those journeys into going to the gym and going to the office and picking their kids up from school. And it just provides a little bit of, it's very satisfying to get some free food, right? Like we all love that. We're humans, we're hunter-gatherers, but equally it feels really good to give something of nutritional value to someone else. That's why every culture in the world celebrates with food. So we're just connecting people to do that. And not every time do you want to stop and have a chat with your neighbor. Like I hide things in a safe spot a lot, especially non-food items that aren't perishable, just because I'm, quite busy and it's just easier sometimes, but I love to have the chat and get to thank you. Yeah. That connection, there's still a human connection.
That's such a wonderful concept. And on your side, what's the business model? It is a business. It's not a nonprofit, right?
Nope. We are definitely a business. We are venture capital backed. We've raised 5 rounds of funding, over $50 million.
I saw that.
And our business model is, the app is free. Although we do have some 2 or 3% of our users become a supporter to support our mission, which means they pay, a couple dollars a month and they get status in the app. But the vast majority of our revenues come from our B2B solution. So for the Food Waste Heroes program, all of the businesses that we partner with, they have net zero targets, they've got food waste reduction targets, and they know that they can't reach those without solving for end of day food surplus at their establishments or their stores. And so they pay us to make sure that food is eaten. And that helps them it helps them avoid the carbon emissions associated with that and get closer to their environmental targets.
So great. And you're uniquely poised to solve this problem in any country in the world, it seems like.
That's our goal. Our goal is to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis as fast and as broadly as we can. So we know that 40% of all food globally goes to waste, and that wasted food accounts for 10% of global carbon emissions. It's if it were a country, food waste would be the third largest polluter or contributor to the climate crisis after only China and the US. So it's really a big problem. And almost all of that food can be eaten. It's just about leveraging modern technology to get food where there's surplus to food where someone's hungry, right? And we're not trying to solve or address food poverty. They're actually two very different things. Of course, some people who are in food, in financially difficult situations benefit immensely from getting access to fresh food on Olio. But the reality is that you could feed all 800 million hungry people on the planet on less than a fourth of what is wasted just in the US and UK alone. So we have way too much food.
Unbelievable.
But we do have 2.5 billion people joining Earth, and by 2050, and the only way that we're going to be able to feed them is by starting to redistribute the food that we already have. So this is really an inevitability as far as we're concerned.
Well, that is so amazing. I love every single part of your mission. I support it wholeheartedly, using the system, working within it, but to dismantle it. Obviously, you have roots that are very different, and I want to get to that. But before we go back to how it all began, you're in the UK. You've been there for, you said, 16 years, right?
Yeah.
So, born and raised in the U.S. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I lived in Europe for 8 years. My partner is Dutch.
Where'd you live?
I lived in Eindhoven, south of Amsterdam, but I also lived in Amsterdam for a couple years as well. Yeah. Blew my mind. So I've experienced at least a part of your journey, and then we came back here. So you've seen both sides of the culture. You've changed a lot. I'm curious, before we dive into the origin story, what role has travel played, would you say, in your founding this company? Has it changed your perspective at all?
Yes. I mean, I did grow up in a fairly sheltered rural part of America, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That said, my dad is a massive hippie and a massive traveler, and he took us all over. When I was about 9, he put us in the van one day, and we drove down to Mexico, and we spent 6 weeks there. It's like no clothing and no plan, but we just like met locals and lived with them. So I've always had a very adventurous mindset, I think, that was instilled in me from my parents, and a lot of that included travel. And I think that when you see, and I've been all over the world. I love traveling. It's been obviously not the same with COVID, and actually now I'm much more mindful of my carbon footprint than I used to be. So I'm hoping to go to France next week, for example, and I'm taking the train. I'm not flying. So it does that has changed how I think about travel. But I think getting exposure to other cultures and seeing how happy people are, like in places where they have so little. So from Brazil, I can remember being in the favelas in Brazil and also the slums of Mumbai, and seeing people who are clearly we would consider destitute, with almost no possessions, but just rating it with joy. And like, I think that's the kind, when I think about travel and how it's impacted me, it's those memories that have really made me do two things. One, I've become quite anti-consumerist. Like, I just have learned that I don't like buying things. I feel guilty when I buy things. I don't enjoy owning possessions. I feel like they're a burden. So I've just been much more minimalist. I haven't bought new clothes in over 10 years. Everything is used or secondhand, pre-loved, depending on how you want to market it. Mm-hmm. And also, I think that what I do have with my disposable income is very experience-based, like going to the theater and investing and going to see VIP tickets for a concert and like splurging on something like that rather than buying stuff.
I'm in
a lot of that
complete
comes from
agreement with
traveling.
you. So you say you grew up as a poor hippie in Iowa. You started a series of micro businesses. You always had an entrepreneur slant. Yeah. So how did your journey begin? Okay.
They started a cooperative, which is a wholesale herbs and spices and natural foods product business. And so that took a long time to be successful. And in the sort of limbo years, when we didn't have very much money at all and borrowed money from the bank and all of that kind of stuff, my mom, especially because my parents separated and I was the oldest of 6 kids, just was a real hustler. Like she's the one who taught me how to have a million sort of side gigs on the go. And we had like, year-round yard sales of all different varieties, like at home. And as a kid, I used to braid people's hair at recess in exchange for money. I used to collect all the tin cans at the lake, and then tin cans. That sounds so British. all the pop cans, and like hundreds of pounds worth of pop cans, and we'd take them in the supermarket and cash them in. And there was just loads of, when I went at school, I supplied the school cafe with my mom's candy and brownies and everything that I sold for 25 cents each. And there were just all these little things that I did to earn money. I love, I'm not very creative in any other way except trying to figure out how to create something of value that someone else values, and then have a fair exchange for that. Like, I find that process very satisfying.
So I love that process. It's something I've heard before. I get it. So you say, I need financial stability because I'm sick of living this way. I've felt that in my life. I understand that completely. So describe the journey from the corporate life to this. Was it something that was constantly eating away at you for the 13 years? Was it something that you noticed was a problem? Or were you able to just say, I need to do this as a stepping stone to get myself financial freedom, and then I can do that? How did you feel about it during that time?
So I think I felt conflicted. On the one hand, I was really valued being financially independent. I valued having disposable income so I could travel, so I could shop, things that I cared about in my 20s, I would say. And also being able to spoil my friends and family back home in Iowa when I went home. On the other hand, I mean, I'm just, little things like I have some tattoos, and like back then you had to hide them, right? Like now it doesn't matter because time's moved on. But I just felt a bit like a fish out of water. Like I wasn't bringing my authentic self to work. And, I definitely never woke up on a Monday saying at 4:00 in the morning saying, I can't wait to sell credit cards.
Let's go.
To the finish. I mean, like, not the finish. I mean, like, to the fins. Actually, they're not finished. To the fins.
The fins.
Because I was responsible for 11 Northern European markets. That's why I say that. But that said, I don't think if it wasn't for, I'm not sure I would have taken the plunge pre-becoming a mother when the calculus just dramatically changed. So I just did the math because my job required a lot of travel and my partner wasn't supportive. And my only option was to hire live-in help, right? Because I was going to have to take overnight trips. But I just started doing the math. I'm like, this isn't how I want to, that's not the kind of mother I want to be. I couldn't figure out how I could be away to do my job and still be the kind of mother that I wanted to be. So it forced my hand. And it made me reevaluate my priorities. And I realized I was very happy earning just enough to live on, really, which is why I stopped buying new clothes and cut back on a lot of my expenses. If it meant I had full autonomy over my time and got to choose when and how I spent that time with my son, didn't mean I didn't want to do anything. I can remember being like 7 days post-birth, mowing the lawn. I'm a very active, high energy person. It just meant that I wanted to do things that were within my own domain.
All right, folks, it's time for a quick commercial break. Now, I've been doing this for a very long time, and let me tell you, folks, it's a pretty thankless job to create another podcast in a sea of about 1 trillion of them. Who the hell cares? So I'm going to use the sponsorship time that will one day be filled for tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, by brands like Patagonia to plug my own ethical marketing company, Aloha Marketing. That's ALOA Marketing. We specialize in helping mission-driven startups, nonprofits, and people and organizations with a message worth sharing, from e-commerce websites with thousands of products to redesigns to social media management, content creation, video, audio like this piece you're listening to right now, to SEO, to learning management systems, and much more. We handle all aspects of your brand and marketing in the digital age. So if you are in need of assistance, or if you know someone who does, visit aloamarketing.com. That's aloamarketing.com. And now, enough of that nonsense. Back to the show. All right, so now that you're into this, you've gotten some success. You've gotten big funding, over $50 million of funding. The idea has been proven time and again, and it's just growing like wildfire. Yeah. How has your personal life changed? How do you feel? Do you feel more energized? Are you happier than ever? Are you getting more stressed out as it gets bigger? Where are you today?
Today, which is pretty much 7 years on, it's very different than it was in the beginning. I mean, your startup is your baby. In the beginning, the highs and lows are the same, but they're just much more frequent in the beginning. You're still sort of like constantly feeling like at any minute, the whole thing could fall apart like a house of cards. And like you have that sense of, it's like when you're studying for a test you really care about. It's like there's no such thing as too much studying. Like it's quite hard to switch off. And in the early stages of your own startup or your own creative project or anything that's yours, that you're trying to nurture and like bring to life, it's quite easy to be obsessive, overwork, get burnout. And I certainly suffered some of that in the beginning, although being a second-time founder and also just being, I'm in my mid-40s now, like starting to realize that life's short and want to enjoy the sunshine too, sort of kept things in check a bit, but my anxiety levels were a lot higher. And now I can actually say we're at a very different point, and I'm experiencing something new in that we've just grown quite quickly. We've grown the team now to over 100, started a little satellite office in Singapore and now in Mexico City. And I'm managing a team that's bigger than I've ever managed before. And it's like new challenges. But I feel I was saying this to someone yesterday. I was like, I feel very competent, right? Like I feel very competent. And I think for a long time, I might have had some imposter syndrome or a bit of the fake it till you make it, or God, I can't believe no one's figured out that I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm making it all up as I go along. And now, having 10 years having run my own businesses, or been a co-founder, actually, I'm like, I sort of do know what I'm talking about. And like, I can figure it out. And even if I don't know how to do it, I know who to ask or how to find to learn from other people's experience. And it's quite a nice place to arrive at. And I'm sure that this joy will be very short-lived, and something will come from left field and like knock me sideways, and I'll have to figure out how to get back up again. But right now I'm feeling quite just energized, and like we have a clear vision. I feel like we've got the resources and the right people to execute against it. My main concern is the lack of urgency from the general public and many businesses around the pace of the climate destruction, and just complete blinders on about what's going on, and how in our lifetime, not just in our lifetime, in the next 10 years, the world's going to change a lot. And I don't know if we're ready for it, but I'm babbling now, but I am insanely optimistic in general as a person. So I'd like to think that we'll find a way to keep our species alive. But I think generally speaking, it's heartbreaking. I find it, and also incredibly frustrating. It's just such general, widespread denial.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that is the hardest thing. I mean, we don't know whether we can solve these problems or not. We're not sure whether we can win this battle or not at this point. But one thing I am sure about is that if we don't try to solve these problems, we absolutely will not solve these problems. So if you don't do what you're doing, and if people like you don't do similar things, that's why I'm making this show to support.
Too. Yeah.
I'm trying to support you people, because without the attempt, we'll never get there. Yeah. And we have to at least try, because we're smart when we put our minds to it. We can achieve amazing things when we put our minds to it. But if we don't even put our minds to it, that is the greatest tragedy. And we say, I'm just going to drop ship some more cheap plastic crap that's going to break in 5 minutes, going straight to the landfill, because that's still the de facto business model for so many people who want to become entrepreneurs. They're not even thinking about what good can it do, or what can I bake in at the beginning of this so that later it can achieve something if it works out. Nobody's even thinking about that.
Yeah.
So it's
not enough people, not yet.
Yeah, not enough, right, exactly. Some are.
Absolutely. And also I just think, I mean, coming back to what I said earlier at the intro, my provocative intro, where I said I'm a hardcore capitalist, like I am and I'm not. But what I do know is that money, how people choose to spend their money, is what is the biggest influence in terms of how businesses operate in order to sell you something to get that money. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, everything you buy is a vote for the world you want to live in. Just like everything you throw away is a vote for the world you want to live in. And we're all 100% empowered to spend our money in a way that helps to, even if you don't want to do anything, you can be thoughtful about how you spend your money. It doesn't mean you have to buy fancy, organic, fair trade, blah, blah, blah. But like, if you don't think a company is operating with a healthy supply chain, or they treat their customers fairly, or their employees fairly, it's like, don't buy their stuff, like, period. Vote with your dollar, vote with your pound. And I think that is one of the things I find very frustrating, is that there's just this like senseless, like, regular, everyday, all of us, mainstream individuals aren't being conscious consumers.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think it's so tough for people to look at their life? Why do you think there's such an emotional attachment generally to these things? Is it just convenience? What would you describe it as that makes it so hard for people to question the little things that they might do generally or not do?
I wish that's a $1 billion question there.
Right. Or why do some people recognize the boat we're in and other people don't? That's another question that's worth $1 billion.
It's to answer with compassion, right?
Yes.
Because not assuming that it's not because it's willful ignorance. It's probably because there's something else going on in someone's life that's just a higher priority, that may be a source of more significant acute stress, and that whether it's relationship stress or financial stress or health stress or and that you sort of gravitate towards your time and energy, and your brain power gravitates towards, like, what's the most stressful thing in your life. And it's a lot of people who might be facing something that for them is a higher priority stress. And I haven't been able to step away from that and then think about something that's as opposed to something that's right now is stress versus something that actually is going to be a stress in 2 years, 5 years when my grandkids, and it's that time, that sort of time distance, like that immediacy of something, a threat that's facing you right now, whatever threat is in your life versus a future threat. It's quite hard to get your head around that. But that would be just a random guess.
Yeah, I think that's partly it. And I think also certainly in this country,
people feeling powerless.
Yeah, people feel so let down by the system around them. I think so many people feel really let down and not taken care of especially in America. People who did everything right and were punished for it, or are still in debt, or are working 3 jobs. There's no safety net, no health care. Or the first time something happens, they get a crippling health care bill that bankrupts them and their family. So there's not a lot of love of giving back to that system. There's almost a hatred of that system. So say, why should I care about what happens to you all when you all have abandoned me when I needed help? So fine, give me the styrofoam plates, give me the plastic forks, give me the straws, give me the fast, give it all to me all the time. In some cases, because you have to want to care about helping other people. You have to want to care about us getting through
this
as well.
About the collective.
Yeah. You have to believe in that.
That individual versus the collective. It's in America specifically, it's a very individualistic society, which in some ways has served it well, right, in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation and things like that. But that lack of individual trumps collective, and therefore, when you're asking people to what are perceived sacrifices, right, for the collective good, like the math just doesn't add up. It's just cultural. It's just ingrained in you in a certain way, which does make me think that actually to really get cut through from a messaging perspective and actually encourage people to change their behavior, it might need to stop focusing on the collective good of the planet and our future generations and figure out how to make the messaging more about like immediate individual benefit, which ultimately probably comes down to financial taxing and financial reward of the behaviors that we want to see. And eventually that will all be regulated because we won't have a choice. It'll be more expensive to put out the collective problems, and there will be a currency, whether it's carbon tax or whatever, that somehow, or whether it's, having to pay more to have your waste taken away or your food, at the household level. And which brings me back to why I am in some ways capitalist, because I do believe that money is, in the world that we live in, is like the biggest lever we have to influence behavior, sadly, at the corporate, societal, and individual level. And so probably going to need to find a way, if we really want to fix this, to pay people to do the right thing and have the desired outcome, and to financially penalize people who choose to live their life in a way that is more harming the collective.
Yeah. And I think that the most powerful solutions are the most subversive, and yours is that, because when people are confronted with certain no-brainer decisions, they will do the right thing consciously or unconsciously. If I have extra food and I'm going on vacation and I just say, I don't want to throw this away, I can do this out of convenience, or like your business partner who wanted to just move her food. You can do something out of convenience in that moment, not realizing that you're contributing to the solution of the 40% food waste problem. So stuff like that seems to work. And that's why I applaud you and your ideas so much, because you're not framing it in the sense of choose this more expensive deodorant versus a cheaper, worse deodorant, which is the Whole Foods model. And there's so many things that are weird about that whole thing. But you're saying, hey, here's this thing you never thought of. We're solving that. Wouldn't it be more convenient if you did this? And then they can do that out of pure convenience, and they're helping.
And it's pure convenience. And plus, it just feels really good.
Right. But you're starting that. That's the subversive element, because they start it for one reason, but then later you've locked them into a cycle where it feels good. And they say, that was nice. I liked giving my bread to that person. I liked baking a cake. I had a conversation with somebody, with a human being in my orbit that I never would have.
For a recipe, exactly.
Right.
Someone I never would have been.
I left my house for once in 2.5 years. And you don't have to. If you're busy, you can just leave it in a box. But you could also meet somebody. So
we are
so
social, tribal We're a
Yeah.
social tribal species, and like we have moved into these like nuclear individual pods, and it's very counter. It's a very recent phenomenon. It's very counter to all of our evolutionary instincts, and sharing of resources in a community is as old as the human species. So I think we're trying to bring back something that we a lost like way of behaving, but in a modern, trusted, convenient, mobile first way. And that's been why we've been successful, is because people are like, wait a minute, it's just I'm doing something that actually feels really natural and very satisfying. But it's it's not just going to the shop, buying something, eating half of it, throwing it away, doing it repeat. And yeah, it's I don't know. I think that it's subversive, but actually it's the most natural thing ever at the same time.
You're helping people get in touch with that part of humanity that we are
Yes,
systematically lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps
No,
by
I mean,
design, perhaps by chance. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I know I want to be respectful of your time. We have a hard stop here, so I want to leave the last word to you. I want you to say, what is the most unusual or contrary piece of advice that you feel or believe that you might give that's not mainstream at all?
My dad always said, you can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. And I know it's ridiculous, but actually I think that's quite good advice. And I'll let your listeners unpack that, but it really just comes down to like you've got your own values and you can decide how you behave, and you can choose who to surround yourself with. But what you can't do is try and impose your own values on other people. That's the no there. So
that's amazing. That is a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 response. Again, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure. Consider me one more person who is a friend from across the pond at this point.
We have some people in California, so I'm expecting you to add some bread or fruit or something non-perishable. There's not so many people, so start with something that won't go off.
That sounds great. Yes, I would love to be a part of this mission. And again, I can't thank you enough for sitting and just telling your story. I think it's a fabulous story. I wholeheartedly support what you're doing and your mission, and
Thank you.
I'm deeply honored that you would join me for this.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for your show and for spreading the word. So have a lovely day.
It's my pleasure. You as well. And the podcast is officially over.